Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yakker. My guest on today's show is paranormal investigator and medium Dawn Hunter Clark. I'll be talking with Dawn about her book, Paranormal Canadian Tales, A Supernatural Journey. Dawn Hunter Clark, welcome to Paranormal Yakker.
Thank you so much for having me, Stan. I'm really happy to be here.
You, Dawn, have referred to yourself as a reluctant medium. Could you explain your reason for saying that?
It was actually my editor, Dinah Roseberry from Schiffer Books, who referred to me as a reluctant medium. I'm not completely comfortable with titles because then the expectation might not be what I'm into or able to do. And so I don't like to have the responsibility of these titles because everything has been very organic for me. It hasn't been something that I tried to do. I actually tried to stay away from the paranormal. And then I finally accepted, okay, something's going on.
Your book contains supernatural tales that take place across Canada and stories that connect experiences to the UK. One of the many paranormal events you write about is a poltergeist in a house on Albert Street. Firstly, I would like to know where Albert Street is located, and secondly, what can you tell me about the poltergeist in that house?
Albert Street, the house was located on the corner of Albert and John Streets in Oshawa, Ontario, right above Lake Ontario. It was my parents' first home. They were young when they bought it. My mom was probably 21 or 22, and my dad was in construction at the time. They got a great deal on this house, and my dad began to renovate it as soon as we moved in. That's where everything began for me because I knew immediately, it was just before my fourth birthday. I knew immediately walking up to the house that something was wrong. And I started seeing shadows. There was an incident where I came into the kitchen, which seems to be typical of horror movies, where all the cupboards and drawers were open. And, everything kept being explained away, even though I knew that something was very, very wrong. And we ended up leaving that house because the house caught on fire. I was with my dad for that day. My mom and my brother, who was just a baby, they went to my grandparents and we were going to meet them there the next day. And my mom, just a little bit of backstory, my mom is Catholic and my dad is an atheist. They had two different opinions. My dad didn't believe in anything. It was the wind, it was an old house, it was this, it was that. He kept explaining it away. But it was very obvious to everybody. Pictures would fly off walls, things like that. So the last night we were there, he put me to bed. I never wanted to be in my room. I didn't play in there. And that's things parents need to pay attention to. He put me to bed. This sounds crazy, but this is what happened. And he went to his room. I didn't feel alone in the room. And then I heard an audible voice in the room, which wasn't male or female, which I remember. The voice told me to get out. So at 4, almost 5 years of age, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's the boogeyman under my bed. He's telling me to get out. So I waited and I was just holding on to my teddy bear. And then I heard the voice again and I thought, that's it. I jumped from the foot of my bed to the doorway, ran into my dad's room, and I said, the boogeyman's under my bed. And he's telling me to get out of my room. And he said, okay, you can sleep with me. And so I fell asleep right away. And I woke up at about 4 or 5 in the morning to smoke. The whole house was ablaze. My dad threw me over his shoulder and ran me out of the house. And all of my furniture was on the living room furniture. I just remember being really happy that we weren't going to be there any longer. But that house set the tone for a good part of my life. I couldn't get out of my head. It created all my childhood fears. So it's been a lifelong journey to solve some of the paranormal mysteries of my childhood.
You say, Dawn, that demons roam the gardens at a castle named Hadlow. Where can we find Hadlow Castle? What type of demons roamed its gardens, and what kind of mischief did they cause?
My father's British, and I've lived in England a few times. When I had just turned 13, my parents moved our family over to England, and we settled in this little village called Hadlow, which is in the county of Kent, and it's probably about an hour and a bit southwest of London. I went to school in Tunbridge Wells, or Royal Tunbridge Wells, and I had a very unique experience there as part of my childhood. In the village, so the village has cobblestone roads in the center. It has St. Mary's Church that was built in 975 that's still in use. And then it has the remnants of what used to be Hadlow Castle. The tower is still there. I think the front entry is still there. There's a few things that are still there, but the majority of the castle was demolished. My friend Alexandra and I, we wanted to get onto the grounds. We're teenagers, we're mischievous, we're going to go in through the back way. We were hopping through the hop fields. We noticed an entrance into the grove, which would have been the back of the property. And so we went into the grove. It was exactly like a dark fairy tale forest. It was creepy. It was weird. And we came out into this clearing where there was a huge pool. And the pool was hundreds of years old. It was made out of stone. There were stone statues and benches, and the water was black, almost liquid tar-like. Everything was kind of silent, very silent. And then there was a swoosh across the pool. And my friend Alex was walking on one side, I was walking on the other. We both stopped and I said, "Did you hear that?" And then we started hearing like voices in the forest. It was so terrifying. And then there was another swoosh across the top of the pool. That was it. We booked it out of there. We were gone because it was very demonic. I don't know what occurred there. There's a lot of history in England, so it's multi-layered history there.
Your story of a bludgeoned lighthouse keeper is sure to give chills to those who read it. What, Dawn, is the backstory to the gruesome bludgeoning of that lighthouse keeper?
When I was young, I was probably about 15. My friend Linda and I went to Center Island, which is just off of the city of Toronto. And we were there with my grandparents on a sailboat. We walked around the island and we came across this lighthouse that was inland about 300 feet or so. It was kind of a strange location. And I discovered later on that that was from the sand buildup. So at one point it was on the edge of the island and now it was inland. When we went there, there was just this feeling that someone was watching us, and it became so overpowering that we ended up running from the lighthouse. And at this point, I didn't know anything about the lighthouse. When I did do my research, Radon Miller, I believe was his name, lighthouse keeper in around the turn of the last century. People came to the lighthouse and they murdered him and they buried his parts all around the property. I was just feeling the absolute terror when I was there.
Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII, was Queen of England until, regretfully, she was beheaded. You write about her ghost. What, Dawn, can you tell me about her ghost?
The last time I lived in England was in 1992. We were getting ready to come back to Canada. It just wasn't where I wanted to be at that time. My last 10 days there, my friend Linda, who lives in Ontario, I said, "Why don't you come to London?" Because we lived in Streatham, so that's in South London near Brixton. I said, "Come to London. We'll tour London for 10 days. When are you going to have this opportunity to stay in London for free and just tour around?" That's what we did. For 10 days, we toured around London. And I had my third daughter, Victoria. She was in a little bunting bag on my back the whole time. She was only about 5, 6 months old. So we went to the Tower of London. That was built in around, I can't remember the exact date, 1100, something like that. It's a very, very old barracks. It holds the crown jewels for the royal family. It holds artillery, a lot of history. A lot of things have happened there. That's where they used to take people to torture them and kill them for reasons of treason. or anything else they wanted to do. Anne Boleyn, of course, as we all know, was beheaded in the center of the Tower of London because it's four towers connected by walls with a moat around. So we approached the area where she was beheaded, and there was a plaque and the story. I was completely fine up until that point, and we had visited the torture chambers and everything. All of a sudden, I was doubled over in this extreme pain. I felt extremely ill. I said, "We have to leave. I don't know what's wrong with me, but we have to leave." We left the grounds of the Tower of London and we sat on a bench, and it wasn't long before it all went away. And at that point in my life, I was 21, 22. I wasn't looking into the paranormal. I was trying to stay away from it. I didn't want anything to do with it. So I didn't really understand at the time what was going on. Then I realized, okay, so I had an experience which I believe was possibly the excruciating pain she might have been in, just on an emotional level.
Each of your tales includes a distinctive lesson, providing information and assistance for those in similar circumstances. I'll now ask you about a few of them. What advice, Dawn, would you give to someone who buys a house that turns out to be haunted?
I think it's good if you're a believer in the paranormal, then I don't think there's anything wrong with looking into if anything's occurred on the property before you make that purchase. If you haven't, which I mean, not a lot of people ask the realtor, is it haunted? I always do. I always make sure that I know everything that's going on, especially if I'm feeling something, then I'm definitely going to ask questions. I guess it depends on your faith. I'm a Christian, but I don't push what I believe onto others because everyone has different ways of dealing with everything. I think according to your beliefs, it might be good to have a representative from your belief system come and bless the home, rid it of whatever negative entities could be there. I never recommend talking to anything and finding out what is actually there because a lot of the times it's not what it appears to be or what it says it is.
How, Dawn, do you suggest a parent deal with a sensitive child, one that has psychic abilities, a connection to the spiritual realm, sees ghosts, communicates with the deceased, and is sensitive to everyone and everything around them?
As a child, my parents and relatives say it was my imagination, that this wasn't real. And I didn't understand because I knew full well this is a real experience. And so I had wished at that point as a child that I did have someone to speak to so that I could try to understand it better of what was happening. I would suggest listening to your kids. When I said the boogeyman was under my bed in the house on Albert Street, well, that was my perception as an almost 5-year-old. And what I later realized is the fire had started at the foot of my bed. To me, in my belief system, I believe that was a guardian angel removing me from the room so that I didn't have any harm. Kids will draw pictures, they'll tell stories, and I think it's good if you just delve a little deeper and listen, and then you can get help through a representative of your belief system or counselor, someone who's open minded to that to really understand the child. It'll do more good than anything. That's what I would suggest.
When it comes to spirit boards, the most popular one being the Ouija board, there are those who praise them and use them to receive messages from the other side, which is what it was initially invented for, as another form of automatic writing. And then there are those who don't like them and think they are evil. You say they are dangerous. What, Dawn, are your reasons for saying that?
I just believe that it is a key to a doorway. And I don't believe that you have any control of what occurs once you open that door. I don't believe that, well, you have to have more than one person or you have to say goodbye, or I don't think that that works. I just think it's a negative tool that opens the door to the other side that can do so much damage, whether it's oppression, bringing more you further into the occult, which can lead to more dangerous things in my mind. And I respect people who want to be in the occult. I think the Ouija board leads you down a darker path. And there's been so many incidents of things occurring. And it was funny because when I wrote my chapter, Ouija boards and toy trains, I was probably on about the fourth draft. I was at a friend's house. Everybody was gone. I was on the covered porch by myself. It was a beautiful day. And they had told me when I arrived that the husband had bought the daughter a Ouija board. And I said to the wife, why would he do that? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, I don't feel it here. She said, well, we got rid of it a week later. And I said, why would you get rid of something a week later if there wasn't a problem? And she said, we don't want to talk about it. Now I'm on the deck. I'm reviewing this chapter. All of a sudden, the table, it was a glass outdoor table, started shaking. And I took my hands off of my computer to look around to see if anything else was vibrating, because they have earthquakes out in BC. Nothing else was moving. So I just stopped, and then it stopped. And I thought, nope, I'm going to continue on. So I'm continuing on. And then it started again. And I thought, no way. I packed up my computer. I went back in the house. When the wife came back home, I said to her, let me guess, you used the Ouija board out on the deck. And she said, how did you know?
Amongst the numerous topics covered in your book are UFO warnings. Can you, Dawn, expand on those UFO warnings?
I don't have a lot of experiences. I've had a few, but the one that was where I felt there was an interaction that was a little too close for me. So I was with a friend and we were traveling along a country road. It's called Airport Road in Ontario. It goes all the way from the airport to basically Wasaga Beach. And I lived in Wasaga Beach. I had driven that road many, many times. I drove to Toronto that day to pick up my friend Julia, who was coming from Europe. And she was on her way back home to BC and decided she would visit with me for a week. I picked her up at the airport. On the way back, I noticed a little red light about, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 feet from the ground, just off to the side of the road. And I said to her, keep an eye on that because that's strange. There's no tower there. They weren't building anything and the light isn't moving. Also, what was strange is there was a complete blanket of cloud, a solid blanket of cloud that was like pulling across the sky. And this light was just inside that. And so on this side of the cloud, it was completely clear. And so I said, just keep your eye on that light. I get to the area where the light is and I pull over. I'm like, what is that? There's no tower there. So I get out of the car. She starts screaming, get back in the car. What are you doing? So I said, no, I'm going to see what this is. So I start walking towards it. And then the little red light turned into a larger white light. It wasn't a beam or anything like that. It was just a larger white light. There was no sound. And then it just went gone. No sound. I was terrified because I thought, what could have happened? So when I hear of people who get abducted, I just can't even imagine. I think it's like, curiosity killed the cats. I think sometimes if it's just a little too unusual, I think maybe it's best to watch it from a distance.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yakker want to buy Paranormal Canadian Tales, A Supernatural Journey, how, Dawn, and they do that?
Well, I know it's sold in many places, but it is on Amazon. I believe Barnes and Nobles has it. There's many bookstores. You can even order it from your local bookstore. But yes, Amazon does carry it.
Dawn Hunter Clark, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yakker. It was great yakking with you.
Thank you so much, and get a copy of my book. Thank you, Stan. I appreciate it, and you have a wonderful day, and what a great show.
You too. Thank you kindly. Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yakker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.